Well, welcome everybody here in the art hall and there behind the link watching us online. My name is Laura Huomo. I represent here Bird & Bird Attorneys, a global law firm. We are engaged in the energy transition with our clients, and I'm happy to give all to you a great panel, great moderator today in the topic of the current status in the energy space, as well as Fit for 55. How can we be fit for 55? What we had to do between when this panel was set up and before we had to do some fine-tuning, we had to fine-tune the topic because whatever was said in January was a completely different game in February. We had interesting pre-talks with the panel members on how to address this issue just to make it as current as possible. And that's what we are trying to do today. And please ask any questions. We have reserved time for that later on. And also online, there is a possibility to ask questions. I will soon give it up for our moderator, Mr. Herkko Plitt, CEO of B2X Solutions Oy. And we will hear from the panel members shortly and then start the discussion.
Thank you, Laura. Good afternoon, everybody there. And it's also very pleasant to be here with you here in Vaasa. And also good afternoon to everybody then who are looking at us and following there in virtually. This is hybrid world which we are living as of today there, and happy that you can also join us there. We are having today here very distinguished experts in the energy sector in this panel there, and as Laura was saying, we are trying to give the insights there, how we see that the world is changing there, where we're going and what opportunities we are having. But first introduction in here, who we are having on our, so to say, panel here. First to my right there is Sara Kärki there, who is Head of Strategic Analysis and R&D at Gasgrid, the transmission system operator here in Finland. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you.
Then we have Bernd Schalin there, CEO of Flexens Oy there. Flexens is a company which is trying to establish their ecosystems then on Åland Islands and islands in general, if I put it that way. Welcome, Bernd. Then we are having Mika Paloranta there. You are long-term energy expert there and now CEO of Suomen Kaasuenergia Oy there and been very long time now in gas business especially there. Welcome, Mika.
Thank you.
And Laura already introduced herself there, from a partner from Bird & Bird there. And Laura is having a long career then in energy regulation there. She's been working in various topics there, and especially in gas issues there. So you have been doing your PhD and so forth there in that area then. First, we would like to, so to say, give the panelists the opportunity to give some insights how they see the world going. But as Laura was saying there, we are now really facing a change of momentum. As everybody has recognized there, the terrifying events, what have happened in Ukraine there, and with the Russia involvement there, they have changed the world which we are living. Not only in the energy sector, but globally we are now in a turmoil there, and we have to change the way we have been living here. Today we will not solve the problems of the whole world there. We will focus in the energy issues and especially in the view of the regulation point of view there. The EU has given this Fit for 55 package there, but also there was a statement given there a few days ago, Repower EU there, and we will also try to, so to say, reflect what that has given to us there, what does it mean for us there, the opportunities and threats and so forth there. But without further ado there, I give the floor to Sara, and please.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the nice introduction. Happy to be here today. I guess I'm the only one with a few slides, hopefully not taking too much time, but introducing a bit the topic from our perspective. I'm coming from Gas Grid Finland. We are a gas transmission system operator, state-owned company, and our mission is that we offer our customers safe, reliable, and cost-efficient transmission of gases. We also actively develop our transmission platform, services, and the gas market. Our vision is that gases enable a carbon neutral society, and we provide a platform for it. As Herkko was just mentioning, that we are going through a significant change today. Finland is transforming towards carbon neutrality. We have quite ambitious carbon neutrality targets already by 2035. Also, Europe is going through this change with an enormous pace that hasn't maybe seen before. And what we see from the Finnish perspective is that a large part of the fossil energy use today, 150 terawatt hours, needs to be replaced. And how that will be done, the weather-dependent clean electricity is most competitive source of energy, and a lot of electrification will follow to achieve this target. And how that affects the energy system, it creates a massive flexibility and storage challenge and a need for sector integration. This topic has already been touched upon in previous presentations during today in other sessions. And we see that from the infrastructure perspective, it also affects the security of supply. Globally, the challenge is very similar everywhere, but the positive thing from the Finnish perspective is that it also creates export opportunities for companies. All right, I have lost the titles of the slides, but it doesn't matter. I will manage anyway. We are working currently together with our electricity transmission system operator, Fingrid, electricity TSO, and we are looking together with them at the role of hydrogen in the future energy system. Hydrogen produced from water is one possible scalable solution for reducing emissions, especially for processes that are difficult to electrify. And we have been looking at different studies showing that there is a huge demand for hydrogen in the future. And now I'm a bit sort of struggling also with the rest of the text, but that's fine. Also, what we have been talking and looking at the energy system with Fingrid is that there is a huge potential for wind in Finland. Currently, there is a wind boom. Fingrid is estimating that by the end of this decade, they will have about 18,000 megawatts of wind connected to the grid, and that wind is one of the most cost-competitive solutions to produce electricity. And Finnish wind power is also cost-competitive on the European perspective. And we have also been looking at what could be the potential for production of hydrogen in Finland. And today, Fingrid has received about 150,000 megawatts of inquiries for connecting to the main grid, and most of these for wind projects, onshore wind projects. And a lot of them in this Botnian Bay region, and very sort of topical also from Vaasa perspective. If all of those projects would be commissioned, that would generate about 500 terawatt hours of electricity per year. And if we take into account that electrification is still one of the key solutions to decarbonize our ecosystem and society, still, and there is an increased demand for electricity, still there is a net potential of renewable electricity which is above 400 terawatt hours per year. And if you convert that to hydrogen, it means about 300 terawatt hours of hydrogen in Finland. Of course, we know that all of this won't be realized in Finland, but even if half of it or 1/3 of it would be realized, it's a huge potential for Finland. And finally, a slide with all the text and titles there. The role of gases in the energy revolution, it's very important because we need to have solutions that provide flexibility and possibility to store energy. Both European and Finnish climate neutrality goals and ambitions to increase energy independence and energy security will drive this development in Europe for renewable energy and deployment of that to a larger extent. And these new and even more ambitious EU targets communicated by the EU Commission, the REPower EU, which has been mentioned several times this morning already, highlights the role of hydrogen and clean gases and really speeds up the development. The targets are basically doubled by 2030. And this in turn creates a huge need to develop new solutions, including also new infrastructure. We in Finland, in Nordics, have unique clean energy resources and great potential to be a positive part of the solution for Europe and for our own sake as well. And proactive development of sector-integrated infrastructure can be supporting this in addition to market development. Thank you very much. Sorry if I took too much time.
Bernd, please, your turn.
Yes, as I'm one of those who don't use slides today, I actually prefer sitting while I give my short presentation. So the background, as Herkko was saying, Flexens is a child of the Finnish innovation ecosystem, and back in 2015 it was decided to use the Åland Islands as a demonstration of the future energy system. That means 100% renewable. And we have decided to become a project developer with a broad scope of types of projects in the area to promote the energy transition as a whole, and have of course identified the hydrogen economy as one of the really key components to drive this. And we have looked at a lot of different use cases for hydrogen. So I'm coming to this discussion a little bit from the grassroots level, developing real projects with real business cases and seeing how regulation will either be in favor or actually slowing down the progress. And there will be a couple of questions in the discussion, so I will not touch more on those. But the really interesting thing also from our perspective, as we were founded on the Åland Islands, we have identified in the Maritime Spatial Plan around Åland 6 gigawatt potential of offshore wind, which was not even in your forecasts. And also the whole Bay of Bothnia includes a lot of offshore wind potential as well. So there is really scope to do a lot in this region, and we are cooperating with a couple of players in the hydrogen field to create an initiative called Bothnia to promote cooperation also with the Swedish side of this Gulf to make this really the new Gulf of energy for whole of Europe. So we are looking at exciting times, but a lot of regulatory challenges. So that's the short story, who I am and why I'm here.
Yeah, thank you, Bernd. Then we are having Mika, and I see that.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, thank you, Herkko. So yeah, my name is Mika Paloranta. I'm the CEO of Suomen Kaasuenergia, and let me start with just a couple of words on what is Suomen Kaasuenergia. We are, in terms of number of gas customers, the largest gas company in Finland. Our focus is strongly on retail customers, and the bulk of the customers are actually stub users in Helsinki gas network that was opened already in 1865 when the first sort of a gas light was put on near Ruotsalainen teatteri in Helsinki. So there's a bit of history in terms of our company. We used to be part of Gasum. Nowadays we are owned by Aberdeen Infra Fund based in London. Suomen Kaasuenergia has or last year had a turnover of roughly 100 million euros, partly because of the very high gas pricing already evident towards the end of the year last year. And it appears that certainly we are about to exceed that level of revenues this year, if anything, if we can read anything from the gas prices currently. I was thinking of saying something about the very short term, i.e. not at all about Fit for 55 actually, because at least my days have been very busy for the last month or so since Russia began its invasion or war in Ukraine, and that obviously raises some questions for the gas industry in Finland and overall in Europe. Then maybe a couple of words on Repower Europe, which is perhaps more imminent than Fit for 55 itself as well, and maybe some implications that are stemming from this EU in sort of a agenda, short-term agenda. So starting with Ukraine war and its implications, as we speak, it seems that Germany is now the only country within Europe that is opposing stronger sanctions that would also cover gas and energy oil sectors, i.e. Germany is the only country that is stopping EU from joining the embargo regarding oil and gas. And I don't know about the feelings of the other members of the panel, but I think that it has, in the last couple of days, actually become more probable that we'll see not Russia, but rather EU constraining or shutting off the gas interconnectors between Russia and Europe. And that, of course, would mean quite significant issues and difficulties for the security of supply in Finland, in the Finnish-Baltic region, and certainly for Finland as well. As we all know, Baltic Connector is still somewhat limited in its capacity, and there is unfortunately only one LNG terminal in Lithuania that is connected to the grid in the Finnish-Baltic gas system. And then looking at Repower EU, which is certainly part of this and has emerged because of the war in Ukraine, EU is targeting to cut its gas imports from Russia by 2/3 by the end of the year, through different means, which would include, of course, much higher use of LNG. I doubt whether LNG capacity or the LNG global markets are big enough to fulfill that need. Most likely not. Also by measures of energy efficiency and what have you, different measures, and also including shutting down parts, at least constraining industrial use of gas in Europe. And all those would be needed to happen this year in order to meet the EU target. So it might well be that actually EU is a bit more aggressive in its target setting, and if you look at Bruegel Institute, or if you look at AFRY in Finland, or IEA views, maybe 1/3 cut in gas imports is more likely. But in any ways, we are looking at a situation where there is very strong allergy towards gas, which is imported from Russian gas, and since Europe is 40-45% supplied by Russia, that will mean that the overall gas will see some volume declines in supply and demand this year. And some of that demand destruction or decline may be sort of not just temporary, but actually taking place for longer term. We have customers, industrial customers, who have already, many of them, switched to use oil, some of them even coal, if that's possible. If anything, also customers who are asking whether our energy services business, Oris Energy Services, would be able to install electrical boilers or heat pump-based solutions to replace gas permanently. So there most likely will be some permanent demand destruction as well. And consequently, if you look things in a very positive way, maybe not from the gas industry point of view, but in a positive way, you could say that the energy transition certainly has accelerated because of the crisis we have at hand currently. One final word on how I think we should be doing the Repower Europe and the transition now that certainly the transition away from Russian gas use is taking place rapidly. I think it should be still market-based rather than based on sort of a strong prohibitions or strong closed down connection altogether type of constraints. So I think higher taxes or higher costs that would be actually burdening Russian producers would be the best measure to in practice cut down the share of Russian import Russian gas to EU region. Then the other thing is that if we look at the supply side measures needed for the transition, we need more biogas certainly. Also, that should take place in a market-based way. So rather than looking at production nation by nation within EU, we should be looking at the overall larger EU market, and we should be developing the guarantees of origin market in the region in order to build the biogas facilities to places where it is most cost efficient and with least sort of a cost that can be done, and in order to have the price set by those consumers who most dearly demand biogas. If you ask any serious economist how it should be done, I think they would agree with me that it should be a market-based and guarantees of origin-based solution, a bit like ETS is for carbon in Europe. And lastly, if not, and since not, we haven't really so far in Finland been able to let's say, seriously boost or incentivize building biogas. I think now it's the time to do it, and now it's the time to use both the government incentives and measures to make this new capacity available within a couple of years, 2-3 years. It doesn't help this crisis, but it will be there longer term, and certainly things like using the biogas production residues for fertilizer use, that should be finally solved in a meaningful way. I think not much has happened in the last couple of years. So we should use this as an opportunity to really make things happen in biogas industry in Finland. That's all. Thank you.
That was pretty much there. So from the politics and the concrete actions and so forth there. Thanks, Mika.
I can stay silent for the rest of the panel. Yeah.
Laura, please, what do you have in mind?
Yes, my mind is full of regulatory stuff as a lawyer, and just to set the stage of the comments to come and the questions, sort of facilitating Herkko's questions later on, we need to go back a little bit and to get a full picture on the whole package of regulations that form the energy transition. And I start this by saying that it all seemed very clinical and very systematic, going from hydrogen and sector integration strategies to national hydrogen strategies and EU taxonomy proposals, Fit for 55 package with 5 new, completely new regulations, 8 amendments, massive, massive package, lots of delegated acts coming. Then the hydrogen and the gas package, long waited. We got it. We got a proposal. We were all contemplating on that and figuring out what to do with all of this regulation. Then the Repower EU after things changed in February. And getting a grasp of all of this before February was a big thing. Many discussions, many contemplations, different companies, different countries having different agendas, different dependencies, different voices, small countries, big countries within the European Union. And now when you look back, it almost seems easy to plan an energy transition when you think you know how things stand. But when things get turned around, like they did in February, there is a new element that shakes the foundations of energy regulatory system in transition before February. And now we shake it up again, so whatever we thought the direction was and where we wanted to go, we get this, so we need to speed up everything. And things that were not that relevant later on get pushed to the front of the agenda. So that makes it challenging and interesting and maybe promotes cooperation outside the regulatory space to feed into the common goals to get the package that we actually need to set the common rules for transition in this new state of play where we are now. So really looking forward to the discussions to come.
Yeah, thank you very much for these insights there, and it's already been reflected that the situation where we're standing as of today there is not the same that we were used to have there. It was kind of nice to hear that only very few people can state there that the package that the Commission has set out there was systematic and clinical there. Truly genuine lawyer can say there that statement then, but it's good that somebody is understanding what was that package about there, and we need to have those people in order to
You need to wait for my further reflections. That was just the beginning. Go ahead.
Just the positive.
Exactly.
Yeah, but anyway, there's so to say what obviously we have all recognized that the package when it was given out there, everybody was kind of shaken there that what's going to happen now that there's leading forward pretty much that the Commission has taken, and especially then the national governments has been kind of struggling there with that. How can we cope with that one there? That are we ready for this one, and how the politicians are reacting to this one, how the companies are reacting to those ones then, and then this comes there this shock that everything is taken down there, and now we are facing a totally new situation. We are back to zero, or not necessarily back, but we are starting now from the scratch there and saying let's get rid of the fossils as soon as possible. Having, so to say, started this seeding the idea that this energy transition and getting rid of the CO2-based production, the renewables there, and the hydrogen economy is the solution. But now we have to solve it there, even if we don't exactly know there where the path is going. That's the challenge we all are facing. And one issue obviously is there that also the TSOs are so to say now facing a new situation there, and you are required to develop the national network plan there. And now it's been stated that should be a joint scenario, which is including electricity, gas there, and hydrogen. I remember a couple of years ago there when we were discussing, can we somehow combine the electricity and gas network? No, these are totally different issues there. Let's not even talk about that. But that's now history there, and you have to work together, and you have done a study already together with Fingrid. That's fine there. But what does this really mean for gas grid business in the future? How do you see it?
Yeah, thank you. I think there are different sort of perspectives on this situation. I personally think that in Finland we are actually forerunners in sector integration already. We just don't realize. For example, combined heat and power production is a really good example that we produce both electricity and heat, which is not obvious to everyone in Europe, but it's so normal here that we don't even realize that this is sector integration. We have been used to optimize both the electricity production and heat production. So this is the big picture, that Finland and the Nordic countries are ahead, and we have the possibility to collaborate quite easily between the electricity and gas sectors. That's my personal belief. And we are doing that both sort of inside Finland, working together with Fingrid, and then with the other neighboring TSOs, so gas TSOs in the Baltic countries and also Sweden. And to your question about the national development plans, I think that this whole process now is going to go through some sort of change. It has been developed or driven in a certain way before, maybe like was presented earlier this morning by Juho Korteniemi, that we have been looking at these silos. And now we need to think about the whole system in a different way. Of course, then the first step is to talk with each other and align. What do you think? What does this mean to your business, your system? And then have a discussion. How can we take this into account? And one of the targets of our joint project, R&D project, is that we look at the system, energy system as a whole. So we try to look at that, what sort of not to just sort of sub-optimize the energy system, but look at a more wider perspective. And the national development plans, they probably will be affected by this bigger change that is ongoing, but I don't know yet how, to be concrete on the process. Change will come there also, I'm sure.
Do the other panelists want to comment on this there? Because at least I would like to have a, so to say, very active discussion there going on this point.
We sort of have a smaller grid as well, distribution network, which is at least if you look at our balance sheet, it is the most significant portion of our business that we have. And I think basically one thing is that this transition, whether it now happens faster and how fast, much faster than we thought before, it will happen, and most likely faster. There's no one silver bullet, at least in my opinion, on making us carbon free or carbon neutral, and eventually maybe free, and longer term. And I do think that we need all the measures that are available. And shorter term, that may mean that we still have a bit of fossil methane as well there. And longer term, Finland is a country, if any country, that should have very good potential and possibilities to producing a lot more bio-based biomethane and also sort of a green hydrogen, and why not green renewable methane as well. There are quite a few projects ongoing. One of them, surely you know, or probably more than one, you know pretty well yourself, Herkko. And they actually, funny enough, also connect to CHP in a sense that because of CHP, we probably are able to increase the overall, let's say, efficiency of the hydrogen production. There is a natural use for the excess, otherwise wasted heat that would otherwise be totally wasted in electrolysis and methanization processes that can be used by district heating companies. There is lots and lots of wind power projects, so there should be abundance of relatively cheap electricity as well. And because of CHP facilities, large waste, whether waste incineration or biomass-based CHP heat plants. We also have, well, they don't even have to be CHP; they can be just heat. But anyways, we also have the source where we get the carbon dioxide for the process. So that is putting all these together. That is quite unique, actually, and that's why I do think that even though there might be a bit of a bump thanks to Russia and thanks to the ongoing crisis in the fossil methane volumes longer term, there most likely must be a good business opportunity for grid businesses, distribution and transmission grid both in Finland and EU as well.
I'd like to add to the last really comment there that actually also our forest industry have a lot of this biogenic CO2 available, which is even better than the CHP because they usually don't burn the wood in the summertime. And new technologies to make synthetic fuels actually would benefit from year-round CO2 availability. So that's one of the findings. But I very much agree, and I think you had on your nice slides the distribution between how much solar and wind is going to go in and how much are the other fossil-free energy, let's say primary energy sources that will become available and necessary in the future. And I very, very much agree with that picture. We've done a lot of modeling around different island societies especially, but also looked at the bigger picture. And it seems that up to 80% of the primary energy in the future will have to come from solar and wind. Depending on where you are on the globe, you either have more wind or more solar. And that means that the electrification of society also is very important in this context. And these models also clearly show that for the transportation sector, and we're going to have a discussion about maritime in a moment, these synthetic fuels are only the only option. And that means that hydrogen is really the central component in this game. So it's not only about distributing synthetic methane, but this hydrogen grid will become extremely important if we want to do the transition long term to a really 100% fossil-free energy system.
Ammonia as well. And,
yeah. And there the interesting thing is that the current development, because the fossil ammonia is made from methane, which has become quite expensive, which means that actually currently you could produce with the market price for ammonia, green ammonia, cheaper than the fossil one without any subsidies right now. Whether that will hold long term, who has the crystal ball? But
yeah, obviously this is the case there, that this integration is needed there, and it's not anymore something like that electricity would do without then the gas or hydrogen system there. Of course, in that respect, there's also then the element, what is sub-optimization? Sara mentioned that one there, where to limit it. And especially what kind of perspective you take there. Do you take the EU-wide level of reviewing issues there? Do you come to a national level? Or do you go to the community there? Or village level there? CHP is a good example there. To what extent do you look, or do you look individual households there? And the solution might be different. And that makes the complexity system there, not only the integrating it there, but you are having rather than, so to say, more complex systems and entities that you have to take into account. And the so to say, the people who are modeling these things, they get the output wherever they would like to put the input. But the question is there, that do we have the right inputs on this? And then what are really the optimized solutions? And I think there's still a way to go with those to really understand there. Yeah. But hopefully we will also have some artificial intelligence there that will help us in that respect there.
I have a comment on that.
Please.
Just on that, because of this complexity actually, and this is again a market-based solution type of pro-market comment. Nobody can design that, not even EU Commission with how many officials they have. That's impossible, totally impossible design problem. That's not to be solved. And the regulations shouldn't be sort of a nitty-gritty detail, going into details, and you have to do this in that nation and in that neighborhood or in that city or whatever commune. it has to be, you have to have regulation that sets the overall rules for the market and maybe uses measures that are not messing up with the markets. You can use sort of investment incentives, yeah. You can use market-based incentives like ETS or sort of a trading of guarantees of origin and that type. But when you start regulate details, then, well, it's going to be a mess because there is 27 countries and everybody's regulating details and everybody has their own taxation, and taxation certainly affects incentives as well. Just a comment.
Can I continue on that, because it's a very valid point, but from the European perspective, we have to also sort of be aware that different countries sort of try to protect their own companies and their own
and too
investment.
Much so.
We shouldn't be naive here that the others will sort of play with. So we have to be sure that we create structures that facilitate investments and jobs and growth in this region. And I think that to some extent Finland is not always presented in the European context very well. For example, we have been participating to the European Hydrogen Backbone TSO group. We joined a year ago, but before that, the map which was showing the network was cut from around Järvenpää. And everything above with the sort of really unique opportunities for production of wind within Europe was not even on the map. So we have to be there and sort of highlight the positive parts.
Long way to go there, and sometimes there I hear people saying there that, okay, let's lobby now and we go to the Brussels there, and then, okay, we had one team who was visiting Brussels, we have done our job now there, and that is totally not the case there. The other nations, they are sending there lots of their delegations in all various levels there. You have to repeat and repeat there, and we are too modest on that. I have to really say that one there. Mika, this retail business there and so to say distribution business that you are doing there, so how do you see the future there? Is there still room for that if everything goes for hydrogen and nobody wants to have the gas anymore?
No, I think actually bulk of our volumes are coming from actually sort of a medium size, largish industry, food industry and like they are big users, asphalt producers, that type of thing, and I think in many cases they need burning, unfortunately, and the way forward, the most feasible way forward for most of these industries is actually to make the thing they burn less carbon intensive and eventually sort of renewable in a sense that carbon is either captured or used for some meaningful purposes. And I think we basically have a roadmap for that because of all the work that good lawyers have been doing and all the work that has been prepared, and you are doing, Herkko, as well, and certainly others in this panel. We probably have done the least in a sense in when it comes to hydrogen economy, all in all as a company so far. But I do think there is room for that, and certainly if you look at Europe. Gas methane is still used in end use volume wise, clearly more than electricity. And I wonder how long does it really take to replace that infrastructure? Probably too long, and that means that the best way to decarbonize Europe, heating, cooking, many industries is actually to decarbonize the gases, and if you still have gas needs, the most cost-efficient way to move gas around is through pipelines, and that could be also hydrogen pipelines, of course, as well, and maybe that's something that we need to ponder longer term, whether that's something that we could do. I doubt whether that's local distribution and sort of a small retail customer retail customer purposes, hydrogen is not where we start, to put it clearly. That is obvious.
So you're going back and telling your board there that now we have to reconsider strategy there. So,
well, I think strategy needs to be reconsidered all the time, but certainly we have more need to reconsider it now than ever before, because things are now happening fast.
But if you look at the potential demand for hydrogen as hydrogen, it is certain elements or sectors in the heavier industry that's going to take it. And if you look at a steel plant, how much electricity they will use if they produce that hydrogen with electrolysis, it's kind of order of magnitude the whole consumption of Finland's electricity system today. And fertilizer, ammonia, if you produce that with electrolysis, the electricity need is sort of out of the map. So the electrification will come that way, not from the retail customers who are burning gas in their homes.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then certain elements of the transportation sector as well. But the shortest way from the primary energy of solar and wind to something useful is actually to make it either use it electricity directly or as hydrogen. And then if you want to produce synthetic methane, it's going to be quite expensive energy actually. So either you have to subsidize it or somehow else make the customer pay for the cost. Biogas is expensive, we all know, and so on.
But there is the existing infrastructure in place, so we can then utilize that existing infrastructure, and maybe that is sort of one pathway towards the future, and later on when sort of the customers also invest into their own equipment, then the situation is a bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. And as someone was saying here, we need to do all things.
Yes, exactly.
Everything is needed, actually.
Yeah. Mika has been a couple of times now referring here now to the market behavior. They let the market decide there, and that would be the right way of also then doing the regulation and avoid this regulating in details. In that respect, there's also the point of view there that what Bernd was kind of referring there, that what is then the most efficient way of doing it. But necessarily the market does not behave as we foresee it. There might be disruptions. And if we, for example, take there in fall, I think the best prices for the electricity, they were closest to 1,000 euros there for 1 hour or so. And if we come to more and more such disruptive situations there, then the normal market logic there, for example, people have saying there that it does not really pay off there, that you produce from electricity hydrogen and then bring it to gas and then back to electricity there, that the conversion is simply too more expensive. Yeah. But if you're having a price levels which are extremely high and not as of today's price levels there, those can turn around this business there. How do you see this kind of approach there, and is the regulation ready for that kind of issues? Any idea?
Tough one.
If I go first and you complement, then I think that we are going to see a lot of volatility, and volatility can be a business case to some people who knows how to sort of play the game. And from the system point of view, we of course need ways to store energy, and then sort of coming from the gas infrastructure side, of course, then gases or molecules are maybe easier to store for at least longer term than electrodes, so batteries.
Exactly, and same lines of comment, really, that in the end you have an average cost for producing that electricity, and these market values that you saw doesn't really reflect that cost. But it's the volatility comes from the fact that we don't have these storage facilities now. And the big challenge in many markets, we have a better situation here in Finland with a good grid and a good reserve market on Fingrid side and so on, that you can make a battery profitable in Finland today. There are a lot of big batteries being built now. In many other countries, the regulatory framework for trading storage services simply don't exist. We have done modeling of Cyprus, for instance, which is a quite interesting island in the energy perspective, and there's a good business case basically for a huge energy storage and solar production there, but they have no market mechanism in place to make it viable from a business perspective. So regulation comes into place, how to make it profitable to invest in the storage capacity, how the gas grid as a storage facility could earn money from the electricity market. These are the things that will be needed.
And the Cyprus model is taking into account the Greek and Turkish side as well there. So
no, they have no interconnectors. They have no interconnectors today.
So
yeah.
No, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could also add that the market, meaning when I mean market-based, that doesn't mean that the market wouldn't need regulation and constraints, and you can change the rules of the market. I mean, you can have energy-only market for electricity market that we have. It could be energy plus capacity that, and certainly ancillary services, storage, what have you, could be priced separately, and then that may change the sort of a price-cost balance for the benefit of these new things. And the other thing is that, of course, market enables scale as well, and when it comes to efficiency, you first produce hydrogen and then you produce methane. Yeah, you lose quite a lot there in between. But then if you are able to use the excess heat in a meaningful way and you get paid for it, i.e. it is used by a district heating company, that already changes the game a bit potentially, etc., etc. So, and the scale itself may change it quite a bit. So at least I would say that never say never. It's quite a few things are possible longer term.
Laura.
Yeah, and I think partly what you said, Mika, also, we will not get regulation for everything. We don't need it. And we shouldn't be afraid of the regulator and the regulation to show us the way. New regulation will come constantly, trying to fix the errors of the system and all of that. But for example, in the hydrogen industry, we don't have an industry yet. So we regulate sort of harshly, maybe even more harshly later on when we get to that point. And in this day and age, when we are trying to live the sector integration and trying to utilize that as much as possible, now more than ever, now more than in January, we don't need regulation for that, for smart solutions, digital solutions, which are in the middle, utilizing all of the systems, smart systems that I don't know anything technically about because I'm a lawyer, but who are regulated on themselves as a part of the industry, but they sail and navigate and try to facilitate the energy transition in that sense. So not everything will be regulated, and we can't wait for the regulatory sphere or the space to be ready. There is no time for that. So just picking up sort of the low-hanging fruit, what's possible here and now, do everything that we can in that space, then new regulation will come, we'll adapt. So not everything will be regulated, and we'll just need to push forward as fast as we can.
Yeah. So obviously we are in front of the new market situation there, which we really don't know how does it work and what would be the effective business model there. So, and here I would like to take the quote from my partner, then Kati Levoranta there. She was doing this mobile gaming business then, and when Rovi was developing, the traditional way was there that you pay for the game, and that's the income. But then they changed the business strategy totally there, that the game itself was free of it's there, and you pay for the quantities and whatever there is that during the game. And that was the earning structure, which actually made it exponential then compared to the old model. And obviously we are here in the situation there that we might be finding the new situations also in the energy market there. The business models which we are not yet aware of there, because the market disruption is such there and we don't know which way it's going there forward, and kind of optimization modeling will be done there, but in the end market is something which will decide it there. Bernd, then how do you see the situation now with these terrifying events that have taken place now in Ukraine there? They have certainly influenced now strongly the energy approach then, and there might be eventual changes there or improvements for this Fit for 55 package. Then is it already old-fashioned then or outdated then, and this Repower EU statement came out there. That how do you see that contest?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's really work in progress as we sit here. We don't really know what's gonna come out of the Repower and so on. And as you said, no one of us really understood Fit for 55 regulation other than Laura. So I think the main message there is speeding up things, and then questions comes: where are the barriers to speeding up things? I see two topics there. One in the Fit for 55 package, there was a lot of debate around these additionality principles. And if we would like to make the hydrogen economy fly quicker, you should allow almost any kind of electricity into that one and skip this additionality. Or if you want to exaggerate, say skip it totally, or at least tweak it quite a lot, because that will enable quicker rollout of hydrogen solutions in society. And the other one is, of course, the permitting processes, which in every seminar you go and discuss these topics, permitting is always the topic. No wind farm has yet been built without a complaint round of 3 years or something like that. And there is this public consultation ongoing in the EU now, which will close, was it April 22nd or so, on somehow solving this permitting problem. And it's not a simple one. It's really go to the core of democratic processes and so on.
Exactly.
But these are the two main things that come to mind for me.
Additionality and permitting there. Do you want to comment those?
Small legal principles like private ownership and protection of it, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's complicated.
Yeah, it's very complicated.
You know more about that.
Yeah, and it's just on additionality, for example, not getting into that per se, but and that's what I meant by clinical, the Fit for 55 and the gas package and hydrogen package being clinical. It looked like they were words on paper. Of course, they made different things for different companies, and it was just a proposal. So, but it was still clearer than when we have to adapt it to a very difficult and changing situation. And the pace where things are happening, in which things are happening right now, and we're getting 2 months after the gas and hydrogen package, we get Repower EU. So we also see how fast things can change, and they will change when we really, really have to. So it is an interesting thing, and there are several opinions also forming inside companies who, of course, pay a lot of attention to the regulatory part. Some people say, like Bernd suggested, that, skip additionality and just move forward and do the bigger lines first and move forward because now we have to. It's a valid point. But there is also a school of thought who says, okay, we are in a disruptive situation more than before. Let's take a step back and consider it even more thoroughly than before the disruption. So 2 different types of lines of thoughts are emerging. So which one's better? Nobody knows. And the thing is, when we are trying to get our heads around and the business models around these very specific details within the matrix of all that I mentioned in the beginning, if you change one corner of it, how does it affect the whole thing? And I think that's the challenge. We play around with definitions. Some of the definitions are missing, but you're using the definition throughout the matrix. So if you then clarify the definition, the whole thing can change. And if you miss some corner, and you will, of course, there will be errors there for sure, but it is very complex, and all of this makes it even more complex when we add new things and time pressure.
Sara, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just to the permitting process, that from the national perspective, it can be also a means to facilitate investment to certain countries. So if we succeed in making that permitting process faster, we are more likely to get those investments here. So that's a point that we should consider. And for example, to my understanding about these wind projects and project between Finland and Sweden, there is already a significant advantage in Finland. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's lots been discussed there, that should there be then this national point of contact there, that at least one authority would take then the over there and kind of not necessarily supervise, because the needs authorities are kind of independent in their decisions, but at least then coordinated there and trying to stick to the timelines and so forth there. We had actually such kind of licensing then when we were constructing Baltic Connector there, and that was very effective. And hopefully this can be enlarged there, and it's part of the gas package now as a proposal there. So hopefully those things getting forward. Laura has several times referred here or there, so that you have been seeing these several legislation and regulation changes, and Fit for 55 package was there on the table. You could follow that very easily there, and so forth. But what is different now this time there? So that taking into account now Fit for 55 and Repower EU there, is this a line which we are following and simply continuation there, or is there something new on the table as point of view of the regulation?
Yeah, I think that sort of sums up everything I already sort of said here now. It looked very linear. We got the strategies first and basic principles, and it looked very well thought of. You were moving from the larger scale to a more detailed, and in the end we're still waiting for the delegated acts and all of that. Some of the things that they're not new because it's been here for a little while, is that you start changing rules that are still in the implementation phase, for example, RED 2 to RED 3. So that changes, the pace is the problem, because we can't keep up. And that, of course, creates dangers in something sort of going wrong, because you need to move faster than before. And again, as I said in the very beginning, it seems easy to plan something when you can plan sort of in peace, even though you are in a hurry, but not in a hurry in a big picture. You can use 10 or 20 years. But when you change things and you need to start acting now, that's when you get Repower EU. You get the forces moving. But also then you get the different opinions on how to move forward. What is fast, what is smart, what is not. So in that sense, this is different, because this is bigger and more sort of disruptive also to the energy space. And we get lines of industry that haven't existed before. We get sector integration. And this is what I already wanted to mention to Sarah earlier on, that when you were talking about the cooperation with Fingrid, this has nothing to do with the regulatory part in that sense. Of what's different now is, I think Finland is a great example of being, of course, the model student most of the time. But I think in this case specifically, already from the sector integration strategy, the cooperation between the TSOs and the DSOs, that was very well put in that strategy paper. And we have taken that. And I think even though we don't have a specific hydrogen regulation yet, but I think that TSOs are now taken the old development obligation in current Electricity Market Act and the Natural Gas Market Act to develop the network. They're sort of giving it a new meaning, and that comes from the EU's wish to work together, and it's not even a wish, it's an obligation to work together. So in that sense, these new cooperation forms look like to be the new format to go forward, because they can't be just silos anymore. So maybe that's what's really different, the speed and the disregarding of the silos.
Yeah, exactly.
Very often it's been said there that the contrast to good is the perfect one there. And you say that if you change one corner there, so then everything might fail and so forth there. Is it good to have regulation at all there? If you would say that, okay, let's develop it, and once we know where the market is there, then we define what kind of regulation there is.
That's why I like the proposal for the hydrogen infrastructure regulation, because it did actually, the proposal is as we thought it would be. Look at the electricity market, look at the gas market, don't invent the wheel again. Paint the picture of what the restrictions are when you have the ongoing market. but don't kill it before it starts. And it appears that way. So what we are doing is on the infrastructure side, I'm not taking sort of any stand on the additionality and all of that. That's a different type of regulation. It's not the infra per se. So when we take that, I think it can be sort of intelligent improvement to what we had before, in a sense that you let the market develop, and you, in stages when we get going, that's when because we can't have the negative effects either, because then it's Wild West. We do need the regulation, but let it live in peace first, develop, and then gradually, like what happened with the gas markets in Finland. When you have something to regulate, that's when they kick in.
But obviously, if we are going then forward with this kind of, so to say, regulation there to a market which we don't exactly know where it's ending up, then it cannot be the nitty-gritty details there, which are then, because this would be obviously impossible there, and that would, so to say, stop the whole market implementation there. But then question remains then, what is the adequate level of regulation? What kind of is needed there? And obviously, it means lots of compromises there, that some companies or so to say parties or so, they might feel there that this is not good regulation for my part there, and that's why this shouldn't be allowed there. And how to reach this kind of compromise? As we were talking, we are EU level regulation there, then national protection is there, then there are the various companies who are protecting their activities. Then how on earth we get a regulation which is working with that one then and enables this growth which we are foreseeing?
But there is still the nitty-gritty level, unfortunately, as well. Just spoke to someone here that had tried to get building permission for a hydrogen storage facility, and the local fire brigade said, oh, this might be dangerous. We don't have the rules in place. We cannot allow. Can you come back in 5 years? And we have in our hydrogen ferry project benchmarked very closely with the Norwegians, who have now 2 hydrogen ferries in traffic. And pressurized hydrogen on board a ferry didn't pass the homogenization of DNV. They said, okay, liquefied is okay, but that's of course one more conversion loss there. So the nitty-gritty level is actually holding things up in this market as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and parts of that need to be relaxed somehow, of course.
Yeah.
We have safety authorities, etc., and that part might constrain. Overall, of course, you probably have some principles. There is a network industry, all in all, and you know which parts are resembling monopoly and which parts are at least supposed to be competitive and are better kept that way. And you have certain principles on how you start building the regulation, and I think that is well known.
That is the info part.
And then you just have to somehow keep it to a reasonable minimum or reasonable optimum, wherever that is. And nobody can say that this is the level, but again, no silver bullet here, I think.
If you're going back to this, Mika, you previously mentioned also the biogas there and methane then in your system then. So how do you see that? What is then the potential of those is in view of the legislation? Then do they need to be specially treated, or how we should approach those?
I think one thing that certainly has characterized the Finnish way of developing biogas is that there hasn't been a single way, or there has been these silos in different ministries. So you have sort of pretty much every ministry have their hands on it. So you have TEM, the Ministry of Industry and Employment, having a big role. You have the Agricultural Ministry, of course. You have Traffic. You have the Tax Bear, which is having its own target setting somehow altogether, not at all in line with the others, if you're targeting terawatt hours in 10 years or what have you. So somehow the minimum there should be that there would be a common target setting and some sort of a, maybe committees is a nasty word, but anyway, some sort of a coordination between the ministries and nationally how to make biogas happen. And that hasn't yet been the case, if you ask me.
Yeah, this has been traditionally a kind of the known issue, the secretly known issue there, that all the ministries are taking care of their responsibilities, and one of those evidence was obviously then when the COVID time started there, that nobody was really there to sure who is really responsible, what happens at the airports there, and obviously now the same issue is now with this energy there, that it's so interrelated, and who is having the primary responsibility then, because always if somebody is having the responsibility, that normally means there that nobody is having the responsibility there.
Yeah. So I think government has this target setting, which they call strategy, which is not strategy. Targets are not strategy. Of course, you need a path, and there's nobody who is actually carving that path that would be somehow aligned between different ministries and different lines of regulation or legislation, and nobody that's taking care of responsibility of the implementation of that strategy once the path is there. I don't think we yet even have the path properly. And then we don't have anybody who has the overall responsibility of the implementation either. I don't say that the government should be like a company, but still some more coordination is needed.
Now let's hope in the audience there is somebody from the government or for the ministries there, so you can take the task there that Mika has been giving for you then. Sara, how do you see then the role of hydrogen then, so that what role that will play in the overall context there, and especially for the TSO in the future? You've been traditionally gas TSO there, and now you have to change.
Well, hydrogen is a gas, so we first of all, you know very well, Herkko. Yeah. So but I think that what was mentioned by Laura, by the sector integration and hydrogen is connecting the gas and electricity. So it is sort of integrating those two sectors. And what was already sort of discussed earlier is that we will have this huge volatility because of the renewable electricity, wind power, and that will affect our energy markets in the future. That means that we have to have ways to store the energy, and one way to store that energy is in the form of hydrogen or synthetic gases, so synthetic methane, for example. And in order to sort of be allowing full deployment or big deployment of that potential that we have here, there is need to develop infrastructure. We have to develop the electricity infrastructure. Fingrid is doing that. They have one of the biggest investment plans ongoing at the moment. But thinking about the numbers that was presented earlier, that's not enough. And we have to look at the whole system, that what is most sort of useful way of spending our society's money in order to develop the infrastructure to allow and enable these investments. And from that perspective, the hydrogen pipelines, which we have been visioning in the European hydrogen backbone and working now closely with the other neighboring TSOs sort of to speed up what is sort of doable, taking into account the recent development, that the targets are much higher. That is one way of sort of helping the situation. And one thing that the hydrogen pipelines or hydrogen infrastructure allows is also creation of that market, open market. So you don't have to invest the hydrogen production at the site where you want to use the hydrogen. You are able to buy hydrogen from different suppliers. You're able to sell hydrogen to different suppliers. And this is something that then sort of drives the market.
Perfume of new gases, including the hydrogen there, so in our portfolio. Well, we have been fascinating discussion so far there, but last question, it comes always there, and Laura, this comes for you now then, and trying to summing up there, that which issues do you consider there that are the most challenging ones to fulfill there? Is there something that you can bring up there and simplify to our rest of the people and who try to follow this complexity of the regulation?
I think the larger lines, and this again, we come from the infrastructure to the actual commodity. If we speak about hydrogen, I'm not worried about like I just said, the regulation looks good and it does facilitate, the structure facilitates the needs of both larger countries and smaller countries and large TSOs and small TSOs and DSOs. So it's not sort of that. But what we are all eagerly waiting for is the nitty-gritty, was what Bernd was referring to. There are currently lots of leaked versions, for example, on the RF NBO with the additionality regulation. There are some definition on what is green. It's still out there. We don't have those. And the problem with the leaked versions and the discussions that are ongoing, it could be, and this happens on other occasions also, that some of the old patterns of how you thought the regulation was going to be, they remain alive, even though at one point we will get a proposal for a real regulation, which might make it more difficult to then actually apply the one that will come into force. So the devil is in the details, but we can't wait for everything to be ready. I said this already before. We need to move forward with the transition, pick the low-hanging fruit, do that first, and then go as far as we can while waiting for the regulation. Of course, there is no investor who will come to an uncertain situation. That's a given. But you go and you do your due diligence, go as far as you can, and when we get the regulatory sort of decisions, then you tweak your strategies to the end. But at that time, you're ready to go. We don't know what that final line will be, and maybe already at that time, we're still waiting for something else. So it never stops. And something else can come that can sort of disrupt that. So it will be in the details. The current events, this is my wish, might relax that a little bit, that we might have to allow for a larger applicability of, for example, we don't need everything to be super green, but we need solutions to move forward, and then we can tighten the regulatory fear later on, which will happen anyway at some point. So devil is in the details, but go as far as you can with the safety of the current regulatory network, and just be prepared, and then take the step when you can, when we have certainty.
This is music for my ears there, that a lawyer is proposing something there, that go over there and
go as far as you can. You need good advisors for that. You can't break any rules, but you need to know what's out there, so you need good advice.
Good advice.
We had to hear that. Yes.
Let's see now if we have good advisors there in the audience. Then do we have any questions that you would like to pose there for our panelists? Please, there. I think we get the mic as well there, so also the people over the stream can hear it. Please introduce yourself then as well. Then.
Yeah. Yes. So Kenneth Engblom from Wärtsilä. So this EU taxonomy. I had two questions. One maybe technical and one legislative. So we start with the legislative. So the EU taxonomy, as you know, it was first the draft came out, and then it was an update then with where they included nuclear and gas, which of course was very good for Wärtsilä. So, but then if you read the new gas regulation, it says that new plants need to be a certain CO2 level, and they need to be hydrogen ready. Mm-hmm. So the word hydrogen there, that is a little bit going in our opinion a little bit too nitty-gritty, that EU specifies the fuel, because what we are looking for is CO2 neutral. And there's so many other ways than hydrogen. You can use methane, ammonia, and synthetic gas, and you name it. So how do you propose that we deal with something like this? Is this something should be lobby and try to change, or how do you move forward with that one? Furthermore, no one knows what hydrogen ready means today. So, any advice on this one?
I think that's why they used it. Exactly, it's broad enough. But I think the reason, and this is just my opinion, nobody necessarily knows except the ones who drafted it, the truth. But I think hydrogen, of course, is the buzzword in everything, in the Repower EU. So it's just emphasized everywhere and just sprinkled around the regulation. As if you look at the gas and hydrogen package, and again, my personal view, when I read through it, it is very complex in a sense that it's very difficult to read because there are gas sections that have the word hydrogen in it, so it's just put there in the definition, and hydrogen and hydrogen. Then you have pure hydrogen sections following the gas sections, which absolutely make no sense because they are identical almost. So repeating stuff, but for hydrogen. So I don't have an answer for that. Of course you could lobby it, but I think it would be very difficult for at this, because we've gone quite far, because we really desperately need something in terms of the delegated acts of the taxonomy. So I think the train has almost reached the station in a sense, or left the station almost. If you would open that word, I don't think they will define what is hydrogen ready. Of course they won't. So it will be left blank and open just to allow as much as possible in that sense. But if, and this is a lawyer's opinion, not a technical opinion, what would be a convenient way to allow for more gases or more, even more freedom without losing control? So I think that's why it was safe to speak about hydrogen, because everybody think they know what we're talking about now. So adding even more complexity to that, I think that was just the easy way. I don't know if this answers at all.
No, Bernd, you want to
I could add
there?
one comment to that actually,
Please.
because in principle, if you look at all these other potential gases, like you mentioned ammonia or synthetic methane or methanol, which is not a gas, that's a liquid, so maybe not in this room, but they are all derivatives of hydrogen if you make them green. So hydrogen ready may mean that you can include ammonia in the concept. I don't know, I haven't read the regulation, but basically they are all derivatives of hydrogen.
That's probably how we would like to read it. Might use it.
We have consensus, obviously. You had another question.
Yeah,
please.
it was. It's also a bit feels in the discussion. It's a bit on and off that it's gas or hydrogen. But I mean, blending is a great way to add in. Right after you can produce more, you just blend in more and more. Wouldn't that make a lot of sense, like we do in the gasoline today, that we blend in methanol or ethanol in the fuel? Why don't we have the same discussion on gas versus hydrogen?
Around Mika, I expect you have something to say on that.
Yeah.
But of course, we are already blending biogas and hopefully blending synthetic methane as well. But now, and then we have this 5% coming from gas package, I guess, as well. 5% blending sort of objective, or I guess that's obligation even that takes place in the TSO side.
Exactly.
Or must take place there. But then it's, yeah, whether you can blend more hydrogen or not, then that is debatable. I guess TSO in Finland is objecting already to 5%. So,
Well, we are looking at what are the implications of doing that, not just to our own network, our own equipment, but what does it mean for our customers? It's not that easy to sort of just say that let's do it. We have to analyze the situation in a way. We have standards in place, for example, for gasoline and diesel. The blending requirement or blending in renewable diesel, for example, is a quite tight specification. You have to still be able to fulfill that quality standard. So it's not that simple, but of course, as TSOs, we are looking at how can we achieve this blending target, and then we come back to those guarantees of origin and what is the role of those.
They should be allowed all over the place.
Yeah.
Also an additionality requirement. That's the way go forward.
Yeah.
Just a comment.
Do we have other questions from the audience? Over there.
Yeah, hello. I have actually questions from the stream. So this is not from here, but from the stream, 2 questions. And the first one is, we have talked about wind power, but how about solar power? We have a long summer here, and how much can be produced by solar power? Is it a factor?
Who wants to take it?
I think we have studied this quite a lot and done a lot of modeling. It all depends on the cost scenarios, how they will develop. And until now, it's been the assumption that in the mix on our sort of sun hours would be 20% solar, 80% wind, the optimal, but the solar power costs have gone down quicker than wind, so the ratio of what would be optimal from a modeling perspective is shifting a little bit more towards solar. And if you look in Finland now, there are a lot of really large solar projects in the pipeline. So solar is gaining ground, but wind has been more favorable on our latitudes.
Okay. Other one as well then.
Yeah, and here's a second question is, like forecasting is tricky. What expectations do you have for the next 12 months? What will be happening and what will be achieved? Easy question.
Easy questions at the end there. So. Next 12 months, please.
Maybe even next 2 days. I don't know.
Maybe I can answer to a different question here, and how we sort of look at the future and the role of hydrogen and the development of this energy infrastructure. We are working currently with Fingrid on developing scenarios for the future. And what we have been sort of taking as a guiding principle is that we sort of do quite brave scenarios, because we want to understand that if there is a significant change in the sort of in the markets and how things change, how does our infrastructure cope to that? So we have been looking at this question in that way. So a stress test could be a word that could be used here.
But this time span of 12 months is actually an interesting benchmark, because reading the repower statement, you have really this conflict of interest between what should be done a little bit longer term and what is really urgent. And now everyone is saying that we have enough gas in Europe for the rest of this winter, but no one knows about next winter, and that's less than 12 months away.
Yeah.
So you have this short-term challenge, and then you have the energy transition, which should be done with a bit more patience.
Yeah, and for example, Germany has said that they will invest into 2 new LNG terminals that will be hydrogen ready. So
that will take 3 years.
Yeah, but not in 12
exactly.
months. Yeah,
That's true. So, but the decisions are taken now and being prepared. But absolutely.
Yeah, I guess you could. I don't take any view on prices, but maybe carbon emissions actually will be higher in next 12 months, because many users are going back to oil and even coal, just from a security of supply perspective. That's temporary step. Obviously, we have the longer term transition that is also accelerating on the background, so to say.
And we'll get the remaining parts as suggestions that are still missing from the Fit for 55.
Viking Line switched back to oil already in October.
Yeah, I think quite a few industries took that step actually already before the war, because the prices were quite steep at that time as well, winter period.
Okay, I think it's time to wrap up here then and come to the end. Then it's nice and fascinating to have this discussion there. And if somebody says there is no talkative Finns there, so we have the contrary at least in this panel there. So and that's very good. It's indeed a positive issue there. But I think there the essence has been there that the change is now the new normal there, and we don't know exactly where we're going there, but we have to keep believing in the future there. Don't kill it before it starts, Laura was saying there. So, and I think this is something we have to also believe in there and enable it, and believe that business is there, that and pick first these low-hanging fruits and develop the business over there. So I hope that you get some insights there, and that we be able to provide you a positive insight that the opportunities there, despite the world is not so easy there, and the legislation itself there will not be an easy task there. But we are all together making it there, and hopefully this is the prospect of the new future that we will have in Europe then, and provide us the opportunity then also for Finland to bring a new concept of well-being and our industry here. Thank you very much. On my behalf then, Klaus, did you want to say some closing words here? That would
I
at
think
least
you
be officially in the
summed
program.
Summed it up really well. I really have nothing to add, and I just want to say it's great to have other talkative Finns, because we Finns have a reputation of being closed up and real quiet, but at least this group is not. And thank you very much for good questions, both online, and thank you for bringing the online comments here. I have presents for all the panel members, and I need to take a look at each and every one because they have names. There is a certificate for everyone, so you won't get neighbor's certificate. So thank you very much, Mika.
Okay, thank you.
Herkko. Here you go.
You.
Sara.
Thank you very much.
And Bernd. So thank you very much. Thank you, audience. Thank you, panel. Thank you, Herkko.